that. Adrian Wojnarowski's got a busy week coming up. Yahoo Sports NBA writer. Carmelo, the opt-out weekend, and now the fun begins. You got the NBA draft coming up here. Kevin Love's situation. Some teams haven't hired a coach. Where do you want to start, Adrian?
We can start with Melo. Dan.
Okay, no surprise there, I'm going to guess, right? That he was going to opt out. It's a smart business decision, right?
Yes. He was always focused on opting out, never really considered the alternative of opting in and going one more year like Phil Jackson had suggested to him or hoped that he would.
All right, now what happens?
Chicago and Houston are in interesting positions because they have to start clearing. They need the word from Melo at some point, I want to come there. So then they can start making deals to clear the cap space. Both those teams are working on contingencies. If Melo wants to come, or even in the case of Houston, if they could get another free agent, do we have some deals in place that we could make to clear the space needed? And then they've got to talk with Melo about, like Houston, for example, if you would take $1 million or $1.5 million less, we can keep Patrick Beverly, or we can re-sign, be able to fit in Chandler Parsons, and then go down the list with them, which I think is easier for a player. The Miami guys did it with Mike Miller and Udonis Haslem last time. It's easier to ask a guy to take less when you can specifically say, here's the guy we can have on our team this year or be able to keep and help us win, versus what New York is saying, hey, hypothetically, if you take less now, we think it'll help us in 15 and 16 get guys, which, that's a tougher sell.
Okay, but the likelihood that Melo just walks away from the Knicks, give me that percentage here.
I'd say it's a little better than not that he walks away. But I still think he will sway. I think he will go back and forth on this. But my sources have told me all along here he's leaning toward leaving, but that's different from he's decided to leave or there's no chance he's going back. Because in the end, whether it's Chicago or Houston, he's still giving up $30 million, $35 million potentially, maybe $40 million based on how much cap space those guys can clear for him. So there's a moment of truth that will come for Melo where he's got to decide whether he's got the stomach to do that or not.
What about sign and trade possibility?
There are possibilities there, but for New York, it's interesting. They don't want to take any money on going past this year. So they want to have a clear slate in 2015. I've been told they don't really have interest in taking Boozer on for 1 year. They have a glut of power forwards. They might just let him walk and just have the cap space. Houston would love to give him Asik and Jeremy Lin, but those are possibilities. Those could be in play, but they're not going to get value for him. They're not going to get somebody coming back to them that's going to help them long term. They would just really be 1 year, 1 year guys.
Okay, but I get the feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, that Phil Jackson won't shed a tear if he has to move on from Melo.
Well, he said that, but here's Phil Jackson's problem if Melo leaves. You can go big game hunting next year. Let's say Kevin Love is still available in 2015 or LaMarcus Aldridge is available. Kevin Durant, obviously, in 2016. You saw this last time they were in free agency. It's really hard to get a star to be the first guy in. Amari became the first guy in New York, but he didn't have another big offer anywhere else. New York was a little desperate. He was a little desperate because of his knees, and he took that $100 million deal. He didn't have other options. But if you're a Kevin Durant you want a guy like Melo. Guys know they can't win alone, and nobody wants to become the piñata in a New York or L.A. or Chicago, for example, where you've gone in alone, everybody sees you as a savior, but you're not going to do it alone. So they need Melo to attract free agents next year and the summer after. So if their cupboard's bare, I don't know how they become attractive to those the big stars out there that they'd like to go get.
He's Adrian Wojnarowski, Yahoo Sports NBA writer, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Kevin Love's status, and how do the Lakers fit into this?
I don't think the Lakers are really involved in this. It doesn't make sense. if you're Minnesota, I just don't know that getting the 7th pick from LA is enough. If you're going to do a Kevin Love trade, you're coming back with Klay Thompson. He's not going to LA in a scenario. So I think right now there's so much. Well, I know there's so much divide within the Golden State organization on Klay Thompson. Minnesota wants Klay Thompson and Harrison Barnes. Right now, they're not going to get both. I don't know if there'll be a point where they can get both. Denver has jumped in there, and I know Denver would have a willingness to do a Kevin Love deal without a guarantee from him that he'd resign. I think they would be willing to roll the dice and do a deal and then sell him over the next year on the organization, on the market, on all those things. But more and more, it's looking like he may just stay in Minnesota here.
Oh, no.
At least through the draft, because there's no really high draft picks available to Minnesota that makes it imperative they get a deal done by Thursday. They're not in play for picks at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that maybe they'd want to get in this draft for. And so if it's just about what's the best group of talent we can get back, well, they can get those guys anytime. And I know this. Flip Saunders believes he can coach this team into the playoffs, and that maybe they can do, and I don't agree with him, but that maybe he can convince Love to stay in the way that Portland did with LaMarcus Aldridge when they came back and played well and kind of turned him around on that organization.
Joel Embiid with foot surgery here, and somebody's going to take a chance on him. Now it appears, the Lakers are a team that could take a chance on Embiid. Where do you see him going, and how much of a risk is he going to be?
Well, he's less of a risk the farther. This is obvious. He's less of a risk the further he drops in the draft. But for the teams like Orlando at 4 and Utah at 5, even Boston, LA, it's a risk. You have one pick in the lottery. He may not even play for you this year. I think the bottom for him is Philadelphia at 10, Orlando at 12, because those are teams who have 2 picks in the lottery. They can take a little bit of a risk because they've already used one of their picks. Yeah. I think what's going to be interesting over the next few days, Dan, is how much medical information do any of these other teams get about him. His agent, Arn Tellem, can really control the information and how much gets out about him. So let's say, for example, he only wanted the Lakers to see his information, have all the up-to-date medical information, his physical. He can make sure that only the Lakers see it, or only the Lakers and Celtics. And if you're any of these other teams and you're going into this blind, it's going to be really difficult to take him without any medical info.
LeBron coming back from his soul-searching vacation. What happens when he comes back to comes back home?
Well, he's got to sit down with his teammates, with Bosh and Wade, and then obviously sit down with Pat Riley. Riley clearly delivered them a message, really, I think specifically LeBron, a message, which seemed like a great idea until it backfires, I guess. Everybody was lauding Riles for it. But Riles does know his audience, and there was no accident with that. He knew who he was talking to, and he knew how, in his mind, how it would be received. I just think LeBron's too limited in options right now, and I don't places legitimately he could go that he'd want to go. And I don't think Riley's going to make it easy, or Riley's going to have much, if any, interest. I know he hasn't privately so far, in helping him with any kind of like a sign-in trade to the Clippers. In the end, I think they all opt in for one more year and then go back at it, look at the landscape next year.
I don't know what Riley was doing. I know that he's this motivational speaker. Why not just say it to LeBron? If I'm LeBron, I'm like, why are you doing that to me? I mean, I would have reacted in a different way. It wouldn't rally the troops for me. It would be like, Rollins, just talk to me. Why do that to let the media do your job for you?
Well, there's no question there's no one else who would have dared pull that off except for Riley. He's the only one who would have tried that. It'll be interesting to see what LeBron's reaction was to it, because he called them out in about every way you could. You have the guts to not bail on us right now. And it might have been the best strategy, because it might put in the public eye where he's created a climate again where LeBron's going to get criticized for leaving, and people are going to say he doesn't have the guts and all that. And Riley sort of framed it to make it harder. Now, LeBron could just, LeBron's mentally is in a very different place than he was when he left Cleveland. I don't think he's afraid of anything. I think if he feels like there's a better place to go, he'll go. I think that's the age we're in now with players. I was talking to a GM about this the other day. We're in an age now where it's guys are going to go play with their friends, and guys are going to go play where they have the chance to win. And they may not be wrong. Hey, the league set up these rules with the new CBA and the difficulty there is in keeping a team together. Why should the superstar players keep taking less money when they're really worth more money than their collective bargaining agreement allows them to get? So it'll be real interesting to see how LeBron looks at this. I still think they all come back one more time, and then LeBron can take a look and see where Dwayne Wade's knee is in a year from now.
Adrian, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
Adrian Wojnarowski, Yahoo Sports NBA writer.